Welcome, Alan. So we got Alan Clark.
Hi.
Hi.
I seem to have deprived myself of my picture again, but if
You
you
need
can
to
hear me, it's all right.
go to the top of your screen again and pull it down, and you can get your video.
Thank you. Just a minute. Start. Yes. They can come and start. Start video has got the. Yes, they just. Only the host.
Yeah, just press.
I'm getting a message saying only the host can share in this meeting.
No,
Oh.
that's shared screen.
Share
Yeah,
screen.
if you pull your menu down from the top, you've got a little camera symbol of a camera on the right.
Okay.
Top right.
Top right.
So have you got any symbols at the top of your screen, Alan?
Yes, I've got lots of them.
So next to mute.
Yes. Cliff Jordan is just trying to join us as well, I see. But
Well, I don't want to spend too much time on the tech. Alan, if you can see us, that's all that matters. Is that? Can you see us?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, that's all that matters.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much. So I don't want to take too much time in this meeting. I know we all have things to do, even in these weird times. So real quick, let's see if I can navigate. Yes. I just wanted to firstly put up a description of how I explained this idea most recently to Petra, who I was hoping to get involved, but she's in Thailand. Petra was one of our residents who was a social scientist, and I think she did her PhD project here at Braziers. But this is how I described the project, just to start us off, get us all on the same page. This is not necessarily what the project will be, but this is kind of one way in which I envisioned it for someone else just in the last couple of days, and I thought I'd put it here. So basically, Project Euros aims to set up a network of temporary online communities and then track or learn from their progress. And these online communities are given a platform to develop their own dynamics and structures to facilitate the well-being of the individuals within, and then to ultimately make a positive impact in the world by attempting to reproduce their positive attributes in another group or in some other way. That's how I explained it. So that's kind of one way in which I vision it at this time. Okay, so here's the content plan. Let's see if I can get this. Oops, sorry. Can you all see that all right?
Yep.
I can see it, yeah.
Good. Okay, so I want to start off with an introductory round, and this can be what's the weather of your life at this moment? So just kind of a Braziers intro round, make it concise, or let us know where you're at. And then I want to discuss about what I guess I think is Braziers at its core and my particular perception and how we can scale this. So this is kind of where this idea has come from. I don't want to spend too much time on what we all think Braziers is as its core, as I know those type of meetings can get kind of, we've had those in the past, and we still need to have a few more of them in the future, but maybe not today. I also want to look at the needs that I see are arising in society that we can meet in a unique way. And then I want to go into the process, the system, the structure of this project. So the first thing I wish to discuss in kind of a contemplative sensory mode is how does each of these online communities, how are they individually conceived, or how did they begin, and then how did they grow in their initial stage? So I think I don't know if I put a few ideas in the email, but I'll share a few of my ideas, and then we can have a round on that. Then I want to talk a bit about what do each of the participants, what is the initial primary commitments that they come to the online group with, and what kind of attendance are they committing to? How long? How many meetings per week or per month? How long? How long is each meeting initially? And I want to give space for each of these communities to develop their own structure and their own way of being. But initially, that's what I'm talking about. Then next, I want to talk about research. So what do we want to give the world as a consequence of this project, if we are successful, which I believe we will be, in creating multiple online communities in which we have some kind of tracking process or a way we track their progress. How do we want to share this research with the world? And the next I want to talk about is safety and correction. So how do we keep these groups safe? How do we facilitate, to what degree do we facilitate them to ensure that they're making progress? And how do we help them self-correct or stay in line, if that's the way to put it?
Yep.
The next stage I want to talk about is promotion. How do we want to market and how do we want to find those that would be here? Do we want to collaborate with Findhorn, with universities? Who could be our partners in supporting us? And then lastly, I want to talk maybe a bit, if we have time, I don't think we might get through all this. I want to talk about incentives. So one incentive that was immediately a part of this idea was the Braziers Experience Week. It kind of came from this idea that an online community that was meeting online could then come and have a free time at Braziers or a time on these beautiful grounds and have a little bit higher degree of integration and a holistic community for a period to keep on doing what they're doing online and supporting each other in their life. So that's the Contemplanda. Okay, so we're going to start with an opening round about how we're each doing. And if you want to share about the weather, that's fine. I'm currently feeling like a desert in the winter times. There feels like there's potential, but there's energy in the air, but everything's still very quiet and cold. So that's where I'm at. Okay, let's start the round with Melvin.
I don't think my life is set in one particular weather condition at the moment. I don't have a problem with nature or the universe. Obviously, challenged by sort of social conditions more so than the natural environment. And so the metaphor doesn't kind of resonate with me at the moment, or I realize what you're saying. So where do I fit with the kind of social challenges? I suppose, philosophically challenged and concerned. But I think there's great potential for hope, and we just have to keep moving forward in the right way, despite all the heartache and disaster.
And when you're finished, you can pass it on to someone else.
Okay, Chris Gascoigne.
Thanks, Melvin. Well, yeah, I'm in a very good space. And funnily enough, just when we started talking about this opening round, a shaft of sunlight came in and it's completely illuminated. I've got a huge bronze Buddha over there. Not that I'm Buddhist. It was given to me, which you can see reflected behind me. So as I'm highly superstitious, I took that as a good omen. Omens can be good or bad. It's just how we judge them. But in myself, I'm in a very good space. Sunshine and showers, I'd probably describe it if I used a weather analogy. And I'm not sure whether I actually have like choice or agency over how I feel. It just seems to be as it is. And I only worry about it if I'm feeling depressed or blue or anything. So I don't give it a second thought when I'm happy. So I'll hand over to Natalie Vickers, please.
Yeah, afternoon, everyone. On the short wave of today, in terms of weather, I'm not very far from Braziers. It's actually been a beautiful day, and I feel that way. I feel good. On a long wave, I would say that the weather has been, I've been the last year or so, and I feel like a season has gone and now there's new growth coming through. I've spotted some snowdrops even in my garden, which is always a really good sign that spring is actually really on its way. So yeah, I'm good. That's the short way of saying it. I'm really good. And I'm going to pass to Tom, please.
Hello. I assume I'm the only Tom. Well, not the only Tom, but one who's present here at the moment anyway. The first word that came to my mind was stormy when you mentioned your initial opening back. And I didn't realise, stormy. I'm pulling together a lot of threads at the moment, so it's giving me quite a headache to keep on top of things, as if one needs to necessarily keep on top of things. I guess what's difficult is prioritising. I'm finding it difficult to prioritise. There's a lot going on for me. And in fact, the seasons seem to be sweeping through. So when you just mentioned the bluebells coming up, I'm thinking, what happened to autumn and winter? I can hardly remember them. I don't know whether that's because the weather's kind of evening out and we're not having much change between the seasons, or it's just me. It's either it or me. And I'll pass on to, if I can see everyone, Cliff, you're there. Cliff.
I'm here.
You're here.
I'm facing a window outside of which it's snowing a blizzard at the moment.
Oh, wow.
And I'm making tea and eating biscuits. I just walked in from it and take my coat off and everything. And life is full. So if not one thing, it's something else. If not something else, there's something else again. It's been like that for 6 months now, a year, for too long. So I don't know what I do. I managed to create this for myself over and over again. That sense of always far too many interesting things to do and to look at and to get involved in. And those who are self-employed will know at the end of this month is a tax return deadline. And I still haven't done my tax return. So that sense of impending doom hangs over a fulfilling and active life. Anna, how are you?
Yes. Sorry, are you saying me?
I didn't, but go for it, Alan.
Alan, yes. Yes, okay. If I'm heard, I'll go ahead.
We can hear you.
I think I may be the oldest person present and have just had another birthday. The great thing is I've become aware of is that I'm really committed to too many interests, and I'm therefore not doing very well through any of them. But the great recent addition is that I've not had a partner since dear Honor, who was closely bound up with Braziers since she died in 1995. But a new a new partner has appeared recently, whom I first met at Braziers many years ago. But we've been apart for many years. But so far as the separations of COVID have let us be, we've been re-partnering since April, which is another commitment. Just in a general way, I do feel the total set of emergencies of our human world, through which we either survive or we don't survive. They become such an obvious central subject that I think an enterprise such as NACS is only going to succeed if the people in it are fairly centrally concerned with some or all of the present human crisis. So,
Thank you, Alan. Let's go over to Anna.
okay. Okay.
I'm good. I think my weather is flatland at midday. It's sunny, the sky is blue. There are no birds, there is no motion, and it's a pleasant temperature, not very hot, rather cold.
Mm.
And over to Hannah.
Hello, everyone. Is this an opening round?
Yeah.
We're testing the weather? What's my brief?
Yeah, what's the weather of your life right now?
Today, right now, the reason that I'm late is because I was trying to register with the doctors because I have this lump pain in my stomach. So the weather is heavy rain on a rocky island. I guess more yeah, maybe something like that. Something that makes you want to put your sou'wester up and your mittens on and wear an outfit like Cliff's. But it's nice to see you. Sorry to appear so tardily. Yeah.
Thank you.
Who hasn't been then?
You're the last one. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. So let me share the screen again. I think Alan brought up a few interesting points. Mainly, firstly, that we all have a lot of interests and they're all pulling us thin in certain ways. And I believe that's probably true for most of us. One major factor of this project is I want it to be self-managing, meaning I want to create something that takes off on its own and doesn't require very much management, meaning it does the management on its own, just like Brazers does its own management. Another topic that Alan brought up is the urgency. What is important for us to be doing as an organization at this time? And I mentioned in my email that what I think, what is really one of the many things that's important in the world today is learning how to get along and learning how to integrate with one another and collaborate in new ways to make a positive impact on the world and to help each other out. Yes, okay, so Brazers Core. I don't want to spend too much time because I always want to do this, and I remember every time I do it, it tends up making the energy of the group kind of go weird. But I just want people to know where I'm coming from. And a big phrase that pops out in my mind from the original brochure. Now I know some people have issues with the original brochure, but from where we started in 1950, there's this phrase that a special contribution of Brazers Park is the technique for that integration. Now I'm kind of taking this out of the context. I mean, this phrase can be applied to the integration of different academic subjects. It could be the integration of different types of people. What are some other integration things that this statement could apply to at what Brazers does? Does anyone want to, by the raise of hands? I had a few more in my mind, but what I feel Brazers Core is is figuring out how to take normally different things that are separate, bring them together in a different way, and then to learn from that, to make conscious the process of how that happens. So I mentioned briefly what I feel are the needs and desires that braziers can hit in a unique way that I'm experiencing when I went to Osho Lila, when I did my Vision Quest with Natalie, when I've done online channeling groups that, you know, where a channeler channels for the whole group. These are some of the things that I'm hearing, and they're quite basic, but this is what I'm feeling, especially in this time of COVID. So on the right, we had the need, people want the need to do something meaningful in the world, to make a positive impact, and to do that without having to sign up for a belief system or a specific facet of life, I guess. And I wish I could explain that better right now, but that's, hopefully you understand that. Okay, the next is the need to help others directly, the need for positive connection with other human beings. People in COVID are isolated at a higher degree, and even though other forms of communication are still happening online, there's still something missing. There's still something I'm feeling that is missing, and I hope maybe you feel that as well. The need for support is still there, and this is a general support. This is kind of the tribe community support. This isn't a support for one particular part of our life. This is support in general. The need to be part of something with no belief system attached, I've put that. The need to express, and the desire to experience community management, to learn about intentional community development. So number of experiences I've had at Braziers with this last thing. I mean, XR coming to Braziers looking for answers about how do we communicate as an intentional community. These are people are looking for this. People are wanting to taste what it is to be a part of this kind of more intentional and holistic lifestyle. Okay, so maybe before we go into this next topic of how do we see groups starting, maybe we could just have a quick round, popcorn round. What are people feeling about this idea about Project Eros? And I've taken ideas from other things that have happened within Braziers, and I've really taken what's happened in 2020 and tried to put it into something Braziers can do and can have a wide impact for a lot of people. But can we have a round on what people are feeling about this idea in general before we go into specifics? Cliff. You're muted.
Yeah, I found the button. So it sounds interesting and potentially very positive and could go all sorts of places. Those are all good things in my mind. I think it's good that Braziers is in some way involved in the hosting of it. I wouldn't like it to be labelled Braziers all the time. I think it'll grow much faster without the baggage that can come with that. Yeah, those are my first impressions.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else want to state something that's more? Tom?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It just reminded me while he was speaking that part of the reason Braziers was set up was because it was thought that we live in a sick world and we need to do something about it. Nobody perhaps feels healthy, and people want to belong to something, to be a part of something that's life affirming. And I think the drudgery of everyday life for most people is not particularly life affirming. It's a competition to consume more all the time instead of a collaborative effort. So you're using all the right language as far as I'm concerned, Matt.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? Chris.
Whenever I hear or see the word world in somebody's idea, I think, whoa, now. Forget about it. Look first to the beam in thine own eye. Comes to mind.
Yeah.
Not wanting to be religious. I just think if you set a stall out that has that kind of scale, I'm not interested in scale. Scale for me is an idea of the ego. That, yeah, I want to make a huge impact. I want to change everything. People have got to change. I don't think you need to. Nature takes care of scale and time takes care of scale.
Thank you. And this kind of brings up the point that I see this first taking root in the wider community, or here at Braziers in the residential community. This is more not asking people to change. It's setting up a platform where people already have these desires, these needs, and these wanting to commit to a group of people for a certain amount of time in a certain amount of way. It's offering that space, and that space, I think, should first happen in the Braziers community, and it will be offered to the community. But I'm not asking people to change. I want that to be clear. Yes, Tom?
I don't think you need to. As Chris said, scale, if you talk big and it becomes frightening, and it's not necessary, because if we create a model that works, it can be repeated. Hopefully, and this is the idea of Braziers, is that it creates that model, and other people will see that it works or that it doesn't work, and can copy it. Yeah.
We got Natalie, and then back to Chris. Or Chris, are you responding?
Okay.
Let's go to Natalie. Let's go to Natalie first, and then Chris.
Yeah, as a comment to the whole project, it feels very current. That's what I would say, and it feels comprehensive in a way that is intriguing to understand the intersectionality, the how everything is related to everything else. So I'm intrigued by that. I mean, if I allow that intriguing to go to an extreme, it would probably look like idealism. But, and I'm always about trying to bring things down to the ground. But I feel it's got legs. I feel it's something about looking out and forward that has a sense of that. Yeah, it makes me feel good. I was up when I read it. Thank you for doing it, Mac.
Thank you, Natalie. Over to you, Chris.
Yeah, well, I was very pleased to hear the word space come in, because for me, space, it has no volume. It can contain anything or everything. It's larger than everything and smaller than everything. And for me, when you use the word world, that's already provincial. It's parochial. It's limited, and it's dealing with. It's got claws when you say world, but when you say space, then that's all encompassing. And for me, something I'm much more comfortable dealing with conceptually. Before you have any ideas or do anything, before that you need the space in which for it to occur or place or.
Thank you, Hannah.
Hi. Yes, I'm trying to formulate something. I think I would put it. If there's anybody here who is still seeing human life on Earth in exactly the same way as they did 10 or 20 years ago, I'd be very surprised. But of course, but a lot of people have in fact changed their views almost insensibly. But the present crisis that we're in is partly the crisis of a species that has been behaving as if it had all the answers, and we've gradually come to see that our attitudes up to recently have been a very successful way of starting to destroy the earth rather than the world, on which we totally depend. A part of the craziness of the civilization has been feel self-contained, as if the human world was some sort of spaceship just floating in space. In fact, the human world is a wholly owned subsidiary of the natural world. And I think very few of us have been educated in such a way as to feel the reality of our connection as part and inseparable from the natural world, which we can begin to see we are killing off in quite a wholesale way, and we cannot survive without it. Okay, but people who have that sort of perception are, I would think, some of those who would be most likely to be attracted to a project of this kind.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Go over to Grayson.
Mm-hmm.
Hey. Yeah. I'm just thinking that I feel like the way in which the project is described sort of alerts me to a few goals that it has, rather than I was sort of thinking about the way that you call to people to become involved, and whether there's actually questions that it might address, whether thinking about what the questions that people might want to address together as a group might be a way to think about how to describe what is happening. Is that Tom?
Yeah, I'm muting him. Okay, go ahead.
We missed that last bit, Hannah.
So I'm just thinking about whether or not there's questions or problems that might be, or ways of addressing what the goals of the project are, that it might be worth sort of turning it on its head and asking what those are, because one of them, and I might be reading this through what Alan was saying, partly seems to be about the question of how do we live in this new context? How do we make the shift? Or how do we support or become a tribe with other people? How do we generate, the effective closeness that allows us to make meaningful relationships with other people? And I suppose those are sort of quite pragmatic. I have a tendency to try and think about things in a more pragmatic way, I suppose, where I'll be like, okay, well, the hole in the bucket, let's form a group around dealing with this thing or that, rather than these kind of larger questions. So it seems like problems of people living together, or problems of ecological crisis, I guess, are connected, but how you bring them together in one succinct way of saying, how do we do this thing? I feel that could be kind of helpful to think about here.
Yes. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of topics we can go off of these last comments, but it kind of goes into what I wanted to talk about next, which is, let's bring this up here. So the question is, how should groups start? So Hannah kind of said something along, what questions or what goals would people maybe start a community, start an online community? So the way I envision it, let's see if I can explain it. And this is just one way, this is one possibility. So the very general basics that we all have in common, these needs, these connections with nature, these biological or nature truths that we all share, are a space a general space to support each other's well-being and to make a positive impact in the world. I mean, these are the things to initially be presented with. Are there anyone that want to form a group that will be committed to each other, to help each other on an individual basis, and as well to make a positive impact in the world? And I know that sounds so basic, and I wish I could say it more beautifully at this time, but that will be initially advertised. And then I would see a few people signing up. So maybe it's 2 or 3 or 4. And there would be an initial formation or initial online group of online meetings. So we see these inner 4 circles, the green, the yellow, the red, and the black. And they develop something, maybe like a question, or they develop kind of an initial stage of identity of what they would want a group to be, of what they would want to get out of their group, of what they would want more of in their group. And then they are tasked with going out and finding more people to bring into that group. And they could be more people that are like them, or it could be people that are just share or not like them. So this would be kind of the initial growth phase. So we would let a small group come together, collaborate at some level, and then try to grow. And maybe it's not going to be successful, but maybe it is. And then that would be initial stage. So that's just one idea, and that could form around a question. Okay, we want to create a group that solves this answer, that supports each other in this way with our nutrition, and we want to make an impact on how the government influences our nutrition, blah, blah, blah. And then that's how the group forms. I'm not sure. So I wanted to have a round on this idea. How should groups start? Should we go Tom and then Hannah? Hannah, do you have your hand? Okay, let's go Tom first.
I think groups form when they have a natural affinity with each other. So you almost touched upon a common purpose. If that common purpose is too specific, you will address that specific issue, and then there's no continuation. And people often find others who share a common purpose on kind of a want to think, because they're dissatisfied with something in their life that they need to address in some way. And if I bring in, I'll come left field very briefly, as I see in America at the moment that the so-called Trump supporters are looking for an alternative. They're looking for a new leadership that represents them, and they think the political system has let them down, and they might not have even realised that for the last 30 or 40 years, but now they do. But they're being taken advantage of, in my belief, my view, by Donald Trump, who's not going to deliver what he says he's going to deliver for them, but they desperately want him to do so. So I see a kind of analogy, perhaps. But the position he's in is he wants to clear the swamp and destroy the very foundation of which he's using to change it. You can't do that. I don't think you can change something in that way. So just saying that to kind of create some eddy of thoughts amongst other people, perhaps.
Thanks, Tom. Let's go over to Drayson.
Why am I Drayson today?
Because you don't want to confuse names. That's why.
Oh, Anna. No, it's funny because that's actually usually what people call me. So before I came to Braziers, I was Drayson, and then weirdly I lost my nickname and became someone else. So, can you repeat the question, because I got distracted by thinking about Donald Trump?
The question is, so
how do groups start?
So
how should they start?
This whole project is developing online communities for meeting that need, that tribe, like needing a tribe, needing a community. There's all these millions of people isolated in cities. Their life is fragmented into work, into charity life, into their interests, but they're wanting something deeper that family, that their biological family maybe is not meeting, or that they feel they want to grow out of, or something. How do these people come together and then start? How do we start, initialize this?
I mean, I think getting people to sit down and to speak to each other and listen to one another is probably, you know, I think you could just start a whole bunch of sensory groups with people, and that would probably be quite an amazing thing. You know, like 5 weekly sensories between people who didn't know each other, and just ask them to, I mean, we're sort of, if your target are people that, you know, can't go anywhere at the moment, and this is about taking this kind of digital moment and doing something with it, then I sort of feel that maybe the answer's there already. Because I think that, you know, that experience of just sitting and listening to people in a round when it's well convened is quite can generate a lot. And there could be questions to address, but they could emerge from the group. There's quite a bit of research, I guess, about the sort of cybernetics research and stuff about how you get large groups of people to find things out together and stuff, and organise conferences and things. But so, yeah.
And I realize all these questions are kind of connected. So this question is connected with should the lifespan frequency of the meeting. So we have to, I see that we have to give them some initial structure. We can't just say, okay, here's a group of people, you guys decide how many meetings you're going to have, how long are those meetings going to have. I want that to happen, but I feel that there has to be some initial structure. So like in the development of a human being, in the first 7 years is kind of subconscious programming. I don't want us to be programming. I don't want us to be saying this is the way to run it, because that's the whole point of Brazers. So Brazers initially had the structure of sensory executive. Okay, we're going to divide the decision-making part of the organization or the community into two parts, and then we're going to have this type of thinking in one part and this type of thinking in another part, and then we're going to have an integrative process. And it wasn't saying this is the answer; it's just saying this is what we're trying, and it says that we think this kind of worked in the past. So we're going to keep on trying. It has some benefits, but it wasn't saying this is the answer. It's saying we're trying this, and the goal is to try new things, make space for new things to happen, and then to monitor how those things work. So yes. So Natalie, before we go over to Natalie, so the questions, I guess, that are related to that is kind of, how does it start? How many people? How does it grow? Do we ask them to get more people? How long are we initially asking them to commit to, if anything? How many meetings, blah, blah, blah. And also, what kind of commitments are we asking of the individuals? So I put in the email, how are we showing like some commitment to each other's well-being and to supporting the group of the whole or whatever. So these are kind of all similar questions. Okay, over to you, Natalie.
Excellent. I guess I want to sort of pull a few threads together and then answer what you just said. I mean, I feel that what Hannah is saying with regards to our ability to listen as human beings and as a skill, I feel that that's a fundamental for what would actually be learnt and experienced and gathered in any group that sits together. I also, listening to Alan and then listening to you with regards to the idea of being disparate, coming together and then learning as a community. How I see that really is, we're talking about the nature of relationship. So it's not just about connection, it's about relationship. And if we need to look at the end game, which is about human beings being more consciously aware about how we are related to everything, and that we can't see ourselves as in separate beings, then we need to look at the nature of relationship. And I would say, again, that's a fundamental of any of the groups that sit there. So they could sit with these two fundamentals, I guess. I feel that I get people to come to me because they may have things working in two, as if they were Gaias, two circles of events that's working with them. One is that of what it means to be them as an individual. So people come to do things because there is something about them as an individual which needs to be expressed, which needs to be shared, which we value. And then there is this other part of what it is to be human too, which is the collective. And I feel that it's certainly in my understanding in the work that I do, it is coming from the individual through into a different form of collective that we're looking at here. So I think that one of the reasons why we can get people to come and how something would begin would be to talk of the two things as if Gaia's working together, two circles working together. And I don't think there'd be an issue about that, so that we would be asking for people for a personal letter of intent, something like that, and then also some collective intent that they're also recognizing about this sense of belonging, this sense of community, etc., etc., etc. So I feel this would be the reason why people would come. When I sit down with people and ask them, why are you here? It's very similar themes, that it's about this independent, free wildness that I have as, my unique me. And then it's also this sense of home and security and collectiveness that I actually also feel when I'm with those that I want to be with. So that's what I would say. That's what would for me, that's what gets people to come and sit in a circle. And it's okay that it would be 50 different reasons on an individual level. That's what it is. That's what's out in nature. Loads of different varieties of trees, all in a wood. So we'd be mirroring what's going on in nature as well. And I feel that with what Hannah's saying, in terms of if we really begin to listen from an experimental point of view, if we were listening and observing at the same time, then you can work with this idea of it deepening and growing and also sort of becoming more expansive as the listening improved, and allowing it to organically, what each group brings, let that happen. I would see it as organic. I've said enough, so I'll be quiet. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Natalie. Over to Cliff.
So first of all, I think there's possibly 50 questions in the air now. It's going to be very hard then to usefully, 9 of us sort of sift that down to concrete things. My first big reaction is keep it simple. We could easily over-design all sorts of things now and add too many words. And I said actually need people a very simple design of a 2-line introductions to the purpose, maybe a 6-line set of guidelines, and make sure each group has something in common with the other groups, such as the guidelines and the purpose, but allow them then independent how they grow from that. It may be that we quite quickly develop an ecosystem of different sorts of groups, one for beginners, one people who've known each other, who've done it before, want to do it again further, one that's focused on a particular issue. And I think Natalie's point about not needing to have the same reasons is important. I think there's the same underlying hunger that it speaks to for connection and agency, but actually we can all express that in different ways and come to a group for different. If we give our own reason for being here now, there'd be actually 9 different answers, and that's healthy and how it should be. So it's leaving a space for difference, at the same time giving a simple structure that they all have in common, so that then there's a possibility of both replicating it and the groups speaking to each other, knowing they have that structure in common. I think for me, that's the interesting bit. I've been part of hundreds of groups. I've been part of the beginning of hundreds of groups, but a group that's part of an intentional network of groups that then have dialogue with each other is, I think, immensely powerful and what's interesting for human evolution now. That's why I'm interested in this.
Thank you, Cliff. Any other comments? So this simple basic structure, would it, like if you're looking at the time commitment, trying to make it very specific right now, are we saying we have this idea out, this offer, it's promoted, we get applicants, and I like this idea of letter of intention. Once we get a small group, whatever that is, 4 or 5, it could be up to 10, whatever, 2 or 3 even. Do we say, okay, what is your initial level of commitment in the sense of time and presence? And we let them decide, no? Or do we decide something? Or neither?
I think the group discussing its own terms of reference can end up in a wormhole of going nowhere. I think, say, for example, 7 weeks at 2 hours each. And after that, you can decide to change it. Melvin's waiting to come in. So, yeah, please do, Melvin.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. There's no problem. I wasn't trying to put in on what you were saying. I was interested in what you were saying.
Dive in, please.
No, another point that I just wanted to put in here was that a bit like what Chris was saying, having previously been involved with various groups, whether they be voluntary, whether they be within professional organizations or networks and so on. I think it's very important to add that maybe groups are welcome or invited to interact with other groups or the groups between themselves. So you've got this organic element that's being fostered amongst the groups. Otherwise, the groups can see themselves as being quite, discrete and not actually necessarily having this kind of holistic approach to the kind of big issues and nuances that have been here today. So the fullness of the discourse really isn't kind of realized if the group feel, oh, we've got into a particular sort of mold here, we found a groove, or we see ourselves as being specialist in this particular way. So it's important to actually foster this connectedness between the groups, so that you just don't see, oh, what we'll do here. You have an organic element to the whole sort of overall process, or organic desire within each group, but you don't necessarily facilitate that between the groups. So some groups might kind of jointly come together for a short period of time to really relate and develop particular interests or concepts, and learn from that, and then go off, spin off and become their sort of solo group again. But then that cross-fertilization really kind of needs to be encouraged and facilitated.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And that's kind of this tribe feeling. I don't think tribe's the right word to promote necessarily, but this tribe need that I think is manifesting more and more in because a tribe is a whole unit, or is an entity that has a face and an interaction with other things. Whereas a support group, a general support group, doesn't necessarily have this extra level of interaction and this extra level of giving and learning from other entities. Natalie.
Yeah, I just want to say something about tribe. It's a word that I've worked with for a really long time, and I must admit I'm moving very much away from it. Partly because kinship, which is what tribe is, has historically also been an issue of strife, of difference, and tribes haven't always come together, and kinship issues are still around even in modern slavery today. So I wonder if there's, and also actually on the UK land, there's quite a lot of the difference in different locales and how that can be different. I definitely experience that with other people who do work in nature. So I wonder about it. I think you're right to think it is tribe the right word, although I know that it fits in a number of different ways. There are actually other words in nature, collectiveness, where groups do come together, like pods, for example. In nature, pods tend to come together in just slightly different ways. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Just throwing that in there for tribe.
Yes, and let's go over it. Well, I'm just wanting to make sure, yeah, and that's a big thing with Braziers, going back to the initial thing Alan said, is a problem in society is that we keep on saying we have the answer, and these answers, like in religion, divide society, and although they do positive things, they have a divisive aspect, and we're trying very much to avoid that with this project. Yes. Okay, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, a couple of things come up really. I mean, I don't want to get involved too much in semantics, but the phrase positive impact, that seems an oxymoron to me, really. Not that I want to change the wording, but I just want to, question everything in a way, a positive way. So, for instance, let's say this group now, the 9 of us here, reached some level of coherence together, or a moment of collective insight or wisdom or something. That in itself would resonate in space in an unlimited amount. So that's not a positive impact. That's just something that we've accessed at a deeper level, and space takes care of that because there's no boundaries in space. There's no barriers. You can just go. So positive impact sounds like you're just going around changing people's minds or giving them a better way. And about changing people's minds, I mean, for me, and this is meant to sound in the least bit disrespectful to anybody here, and I include myself in this, for me, there's 9 people here with fixed ideas. Many of them great ideas, upgrades on previous fixed ideas. But the issue, we've had Trump brought in, we've had Cosmos, we've had nature, all these things. They're great, some of them, they sound amazing. But for me, they're all fixed ideas. And a real issue comes when fixed ideas are devoted to, because then they're very, very hard to change. And if I was going to say, right, let's have one commitment, it would be, let's have a commitment to suspend or investigate or release the fixed ideas I have, because I'm very attached to them. These fixed ideas have claws. However good they are, they still have claws.
Can I jump in here? No?
Yes, sure. Tom?
Yeah, the whole idea of sensory is to challenge the status quo, is to say what needs to change. So it's not accepting any fixed idea ever. It's executive, if you like, that has the fixed ideas and the notion that it knows the answers and it's going to trot out the same thing in the same old way. So in order to integrate, we've had to differentiate into that other, more creative thinking group that might be comprised of particular types of individual. And like you said earlier, Nak, the whole point of Braziers was that this social organism would actually continue its differentiation and learning and thinking about new answers and new ways of doing things, and would in that way develop and evolve. I'm not sure it has, so I'm not sure that it really works, but I get the notion, and it's been kind of touched upon by what a lot of people have said, not least what Chris just said about not having a fixed idea. And sensory is all about challenging the fixed ideas. And for me, tribal has a negative connotation to it. Not sure why. That's me.
Okay, Hannah. Jason.
I kind of want to contribute something that probably comes out of fixed thinking, which is my personal bias. Or is a personal bias, which is that my question I want to ask is who's already doing this? So I've been Googling around, and because there might be some of your questions, procedural questions, might have pointers the answering them in the literature that people have already shared about doing this kind of work. So there's a facilitator. What's that? I don't know if any of you have come across something called Full Circle. I'm not sure if it's the same ones here, but there's a big list. I'll post there's a big list of like online resources about running online groups. I don't think any of them will be doing exactly what you're doing, but there's also something I found called Corona Circles. Anyone come across this as well? That's an online platform that meets you up with 5 other people, and then you listen to each other. So there's there is stuff out there that might already. I think there's probably a community out there already of facilitators who might be able to point. I know that this is what you're doing and asking. A lot of the people here are probably. You've done one of the the first thing on that with that. But I was just thinking about where else there might be people talking about like meeting length and stuff like that, like those kind of real nitty gritty procedural stuff.
So is the group saying, so for example, let's go back here. So these questions around what are we asking of participants initially, whether we call them commitments, a letter of an intention, it could be paying a certain amount of money, it could be, I still envision it as being free. I'm just saying it could be saying I will attend every meeting for 10 weeks, 2 hours. Are you saying that I or someone else or a subgroup of us should just go around and research those details, Cliff?
I think we've reached a stage where this sort of meetings are useful for just sounding out the concept and for finding, in a sense, co-workers. The next stage is who's enlivened by this and actually wants to put some energy into it. Mm-hmm. And then the group who actually put the work in should be taking those decisions. Okay. And sounding out others as to whether it's a sensible decision. But we don't need lots of people to take every decision. It's far better that just 2 or 3 people take what I think is be almost the detailed stuff of it. And there's plenty of experience in the world as to what's worked, what hasn't worked.
Okay. Thank you. And I really want to agree with what you said, Chris. Yeah, it's finding that common ground without holding on to fixed ideas, if that makes sense. It's a hard question. And I guess the angle that I came at it from was the evolutionary biology or evolutionary science, whatever way, which Alan Kipps, the other Alan, was telling me about the issues of following the biological pattern of evolution or the Darwinian ideas. But that's kind of the angle that I've taken, and it doesn't have to be the angle that it goes in, but that's just where I am. So a big part of this will be the research. This is just a random picture, so don't try to read that. It's about documenting and showing the connection between groups, what each group is doing, how the group is developing. Is the group growing? Does it extend its lifespan? Does it start another group? Does it interact with other groups? What worked and what didn't work for each group? That's the major part, right? For Brazier's, going along with Brazier's aims. And Anna, check Anna. We had some very cool mind maps for sensory in 2020. So we have made some progress, and I know there's a lot of researchers, a lot of PhD students that come to Brazier's trying to do projects or looking for projects, and it could be a part of the Acre Lodger program if that gets set up. Is there anything people want to discuss about this section here? But I just this will be a unique feature of what we do compared to other groups, like what Hannah brought. I know there might be some other groups that are doing this, and would be great to research those. But it'd be a unique way of tracking the progress, of making conscious the process that is happening, with very explicit aims of creating something that self-replicates and self-manages and is supportive. Yep, Cliff?
Those 2 things aren't the same. So making conscious is not the same as being able to self-manage or self-replicate.
Yeah.
So you can teach someone to ride a bike. They're not necessarily at all conscious about what process they've just been through, but they can ride a bike. And they can teach somebody else to ride a bike. They don't need to understand or be conscious of what their legs and their arms and their head and their ears did that enabled them to ride it. So I think Brazier's uses the word conscious a lot, but we shouldn't get trapped into thinking that's the only part of knowledge acquisition and transfer that matters.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Cliff. Anyone else? Chris?
Yeah, well, I believe, and I might be wrong, that everything that we might possibly want to understand about human nature exists here with the 9 of us, and everything we might want to understand about conflict and groups also exists here with the 9 of us. And so what I'd love is that if we said, okay, well, let's make a commitment to, imagine this was like a fire, and we were going to make a fire. You have to get a core going. You can't throw 100 pieces of wood on it and expect it to take. You have to take care of the center of it, and get that. It has to reach the kindling point, which is the moment when you get this catastrophe, which is fire, which is oxygen latching onto. It's reversing the process where trees put out CO2, put out oxygen as a byproduct. The oxygen's coming back in, and it's once you've got that fire going, you can do anything. You can just keep putting as much fuel on as you want, and the fire will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I'd say is, well, these 9 people, you don't need any more. This is the 9 that turned up. These 9 people commit to 3, 4, 5, 50 groups. See, clicks. So that's until it could be 1 group, could be today. They reach coherence, and out of that coherence, ideas come that have value because they come from a much deeper place than old ideas. All the conflicts we need are here today, the 9. We would find them really quickly if we sat in a sweat lodge or a container or something. It would be like, really? You think that? Ah, I used to like you. It's over. It really wouldn't take long. And that's brilliant. That's a good thing.
Thank you, Chris. Yes.
But if we didn't commit to each other, it's very unlikely we would get commitment, be able to spread commitment.
So is the big question that's hanging here is what level of commitment do we want to make towards this idea
50.
right now?
50 groups, back to back.
50 sessions.
Well, I think if the purpose is attractive enough and strong enough and all encompassing to some extent at least to attract enough people for cohesion, that's the commitment and intent comes out of that. Communities are always bound by a common purpose. Usually religion, usually a religious experience, perhaps. That's the old tried and tested means of creating community. So how do we create community, perhaps, is the question.
Thank you, Tom. Let's go over to Cliff.
I'm slightly aware of time. We've
Yes.
been here now in a quarter, and I'm assuming in quarter an hour I'll be somewhere else. And I'd really like to go from general to specific and ask each person here now, before we finish, how much they want to engage with this, what commitments they feel moved to make, what particular skills or connections they'd like to bring to it. Knowing that we can all say whatever we like and then not do it, but at least hearing where each other's at with this, I think would be very helpful.
Great point, Cliff.
Basically, has it already got legs amongst the 9 of us?
Yeah,
Whatever it is.
let's have a goal to finish no later than in 16 minutes, 5:30. Unless anyone needs to go earlier than that. Let's go to Hannah.
I have to go and cook dinner. I'm already late to start, so
Making it fine.
Then Hannah, starting with you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think before this conversation, I was feeling pretty reticent about promising any time at all towards it, because I'm already committed to quite a lot of online meetings, and I get really fed up with some of them, and so I don't want to kind of end up in that situation. I don't want to overpromise things. So I guess I'm on the fence, actually. Sorry, I don't think I know what I could offer. I guess, except that I am quickly intrigued in the conversation and find myself unable to walk away from it, obviously, very quickly. So here I still am with the dinner not cooking. So yeah, woolly answer. And with that, I will bid you adieu. It's
Thank you,
really
Hannah.
lovely to see all of you.
Thank you so much for coming. I didn't send that many invites out. I mean, I think majority of the invites I sent out is here. so I thought this would just be initial getting ideas, but I do like having a closing with what Cliff said. So I think we continue with where Hannah has left off. If anyone would like to go next, Tom?
Yeah, very much what Cliff was just saying was kind of an underlying current for me, is get specific, be goal orientated. But probably the first meeting is too soon to be specific about the whole thing, but perhaps we can try and be specific about this one, which is specific enough to say there's another meeting coming, because for me it's still too nebulous and I'm not sure what I've got to offer. But I'm certainly engaged and intrigued. That's me.
Okay, thank you. Let's go over to Melvin.
Yeah, I don't know. What I think I might have to offer might be totally the contrary to the impressions of everybody else that's here. I'm involved with a couple of groups, and in the last couple of minutes, and in terms of comments or people have been saying, things have been flashing through my mind. Because one of the groups that I'm involved with is relatively new, and it's a group of people who are interested in restorative approaches, healing, reconciliation, and so on. And my particular draw to that was reconciliation, because of my kind of occupational interest. I think people are attracted to groups, forums, learning circles. And is this about learning? Is it about actually having goals and getting people to buy into those goals, no matter how specific or general they are? So that might be worth a thought. But yeah, so groups and communities, well, people are drawn to things in different ways. There are communities of interest, there are communities of convenience, there are communities that have, particular, fulfill particular needs for people at different times, and they can change. And I suppose Braziers in some ways kind of really epitomizes that in many respects. Some groups, need identity. So identity is a big thing here. Are we asking people to identify concern around global issues, universal issues, philosophical issues? So I don't know what that kind of, want of a better term, focus might help if we want to draw other people in. But I think this has been a really interesting conversation. And I think maybe this group being a core to developing this initiative a bit more before we start trying to draw other people into it, because it is a pretty broad landscape that we've kind of painted today, or sketched out maybe. Yeah, for what it's worth, I am involved in group and network development, and they are groups of different approach and style, one of which is very similar to this, because another intentional community that I'm involved with, which is the Abbey, not too far away from Braziers, is going through a similar process, but that's more sort of linked to what I term as collaborative innovation. And when I read your outline, Nak, that term kind of really came to mind for me, and I saw some similarities with different headings and phrases being used. But I'm interested in, yes, following on from this conversation and being involved, and hopefully seeing this go some steps further. Sorry, that was very long-winded. I beg your pardon.
We want to go through everyone before we go back to Tom. I'm just going to make a quick contribution for my closing round. One thing that's come up from these last few comments is we're all in groups already. and maybe you're all feeling the same. I think we're all feeling this. Maybe it's more about, rather than starting our own groups or platform for online things, it's learning and connecting learning from and connecting the communities or the online groups that are already out there in a more scientific or a more structured way. I don't know. I don't know, because I don't want to take away. I mean, one idea is sensory is already happening at Braziers right now. Online sensory and house sensory now is both happening. And if that meeting could take on some of these aims or apply it, could become what one stage of this. It kind of already is, because I took what I learned from 2020 and kind of, that's what kind of fed the fires of this idea. That's my closing round. Who would like to go next? Alan?
Yes, just a comment about the background of sensory. I think, as I've known it in Braziers, it's sensory has had the idea that it is very unproductive if everybody stays inside their normal social role and situation. So we used to have a fairly regular process where to be sensory was held to be rather disinterested. You are just trying to treat yourself as a useful, helpful human mind, and that if factors from your private life are too much on your mind, you can't really be sensory. So we would usually start with the opportunity for a round of anything which was so pressing on the individual minds of the people that they knew that they just had to talk about it, otherwise they would be useless for the rest of the, like such as a parent having a very strong concern about a son or daughter, or somebody being faced with unemployment or something like that. We would try to get all those things said and made conscious and out of the way of the disinterested kind of consideration, which is the basis of sensory, I think. Just in that connection, there's a quotation that's become rather popular again. That goes back to an American novelist for years and years ago, I think, which was on the lines of, if you are trying to if you're hoping to make somebody understand a new view of the universe, or a new view of life, and his income depends on his not understanding it, he will not understand it. The personal self-interest and the personal role can be that strong, but such people would not be so likely to find themselves in groups. I do agree with the point that you implied somewhere in your written presentation, that we do hope for groups of rather unlike-minded people, but to be involved in something like this at all, it means that you must have a fair quantum of like-mindedness in seeing the point of it to start with. Yes, the people who can't even begin to see the point of sensory are just not going to find their way to it.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, let's go to Cliff, because we know you need to go soon.
I am hooked enough to go further. How much further, I don't know. I could imagine offering spend a few hours in next week with Nac and one or two others drafting up a design for how a group could start, run its guidelines for others to chew over and kick back again. And I think I'd also like to hear another time what connections we each have. So I expect between us, we have a lot of skills and connections going in all sorts of directions, like a web, which we can then take advantage of in terms of how we reach other people. I'll pass on to Anna.
I kind of want to cry because you have completely lost me during this meeting. As for, and now I'm losing the words as well. As for my involvement, I think I would want to be involved not for myself, but rather to support others. And as for the time, it is, I would like to be involved a lot, or I can give a lot of my time, but all of it is with Thea. So it means sometimes she can play a lot and be very nice, and sometimes she will be horrible. So it's unpredictable. Yeah, that's
who would like to go next, Chris or Natalie? Chris.
Yeah, yeah, it was certainly got me considering quite a few things. You know, one of them being, you know, why am I such a group junkie? I mean, if someone says there's a group, I'm there. Also, yeah, anytime you imagine, and you know, I've been doing that for 22 years. And I mean, the answer is very, very simple, really. It's just the depth of connection with other humans, which I crave, and I feel everybody else craves. And it's kind of like every group I'm in, I'm waiting for that to happen, for that opening to occur, and to feel that. And I think if you get that, like even expressing that, I start to feel that now. You know, energetically, I feel a shift. And it's like if it's not, I've never come across a formula to create that. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the formula is commitment to each other. That is the formula. It's not like there's a way, a group of steps of process. It's, and how do you make that appeal to, you know, the unlike minds that, you know, might be causing conflict, but they have the same need for the connection. It's a human need. It's human nature. And it's kind of the analogy that came to me was like, and a number of times I've tended the fire for Sweat Lodge. You know, you Sweat Lodge, and you know someone has to heat the rocks and put the rocks in and so on. I won't go through anything all about the Sweat Lodges, but when you see people come out of that, like it's claustrophobic, hot, you know, such an intense space, but they come out with this amazing pink glow of excoriating. They've released, they've let everything go, they've left it all in there, and you look at them and you think, wow, that's like being reborn. I want some of that. And that's, to me, that's available every time where two or more are gathered. That's, if you have a commitment to other humans, then that's available. And in fact, if you have a commitment to other humans, you have said that you are prepared to let your armor go. And your armor might be that I'm a world changer, I'm a crusader, whatever it be, that's still armor.
Thank you, Chris. Over to Natalie, and then we'll close.
Well, I admit to be feeling a little tense. I'm kind of understanding Anna feeling lost in the meeting a little bit. I noticed inside of me that I sort of clammed up when there was this idea of, you know, fixed ideas, that we shouldn't have fixed ideas. And I found that wasn't really helpful because it felt like a bit of a judgment. Like what constitutes a fixed idea, and what is just someone actually being in complete flow with a universe or a spirit given thought. You know, how do we know that? So I have been feeling a little bit of tension, I must admit, since then. In terms of what we have here, I feel that we could really do with a lot more diversity. That would, I feel, be really helpful to sort of, you know, to see how, you know, to get, as it's been described, non-liked minds, but I would actually say differing souls with different life paths. I think that would be really good and inclusive. I really like the idea of bringing in someone who would be involved from a research point of view for some input onto that. My commitment is, you know, I'm here. I've always been here to try, in the last 3 years, to try and support Braziers to move out into the world and to take what it is that it has to other parts, whether that's, you know, just into the wider community and then beyond. I don't know, who knows? I don't know what that really means. And creating spaces where that can happen for both individuals and collectively as groups, that's really what I do is for my job. So I'm really up for supporting and facilitating that and creating guidelines. So I'd be here for committing more time, for sure. But it feels a little early for me to know really what we're doing here. I'm a bit like Tom was at the beginning. I'm not quite sure. So I feel a little woolly in my answer too. And for me, it actually feels a little short. I know everyone's got loads of things to do. I'd actually prefer to go on a little bit and dive in a little bit deeper. But
I don't have to go anywhere. I'm already home.
Yeah, I think that's me. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I know I've been distant, and you guys have shown me much respect by coming and to Braziers. I've recorded this, so we at the least learned from this meeting something. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that you, for a bit of focus and a conclusion, that you go away and reflect on this meeting and kind of try and perhaps give it some cohesion. And of course, I heard Cliff then say he was willing to work with you to do something along those lines. I think he was suggesting, so that you could present it back to us at the next meeting. So it gives us something that we know that we're going to do at the next meeting, which is summarise what you thought the sense of this meeting was. Mm-hmm. Is that an idea?
Yeah, it's an idea. That's an idea. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry, Anna, as well, that you were feeling lost in the meeting.
Why?
Why am I sorry?
Yeah. You got nothing to be sorry for, Mac.
I was the implied convener, even though I didn't.
Okay.
No one decided. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I wasn't.
I'm very pleased she shared just that as it was. And same with Natalie. It's just saying how it is.
It is, yeah.
I've got to go. Hopefully see you all again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Mac.
Lovely to meet you, Natalie. And
thank you, Mac. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
You too, Chris.
Thanks. Nice to see you, Melvin.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Bye.
I'll send you guys all an email with an update.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you.
And I say
bye, Anna.
Bye-bye. Okay, I'm gonna end the meeting. Thanks, Alan. Oh, I muted you. I'm sorry. Anyways, thanks, Alan. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, Mac. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Good session.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Anna. Bye.
Okay, I'm still again.
Bye, Alan. Yes, thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Okay, where we go?
Bye, Anna. Bye, Thea.